Well, the Rio Grande is a really old river, and it has had a long history of how the river has formed and how people have lived along it and interacted with it too. And a lot of the flooding that we're about to talk about has completely shaped the way that people live in central New Mexico and live with the river. And it's had a long and storied history too, from being uncontrollable and flash flooding and devastating to kind of the quiet and tame and even sometimes running dry river we know today. So before we get into some of this history, I really want to thank and credit this fantastic book. If you're into Albuquerque history, I highly recommend it. It's called Albuquerque, A Narrative History by Mark Simmons. This is where we took a lot of this research from, and we're going to share with you today. So we're going to start out back at the beginning again. Geologic studies show that the river once flowed a different course through Albuquerque. With each springtime flood, the Rio Grande left its banks. It flooded this valley area. And about 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, the river ran in a nearly straight line from Alameda to downtown, but a flood caused it to shift to a new path, forming that westward curve we see today and still continues today. In fact, Alameda was once on the west side of the Rio Grande. Today, we know it as it being on the east side. You have to cross the river to get to the west side of Albuquerque now. And that changing course was very normal for the river up until about 1957, in fact.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Even back then, we didn't have that many records of what was happening. So, we tried to get as much information as much as possible. And it's also very strategic how they built the town. Old Town Albuquerque, right? On the higher elevations of Albuquerque so that the floodwaters would mostly, hopefully, elude the area.
Yeah. In fact, the original governor of Nuevo Mexico, when it was a territory of Spain, his name is Governor Francisco Cuervo y Valdez. He chose the spot for the Villa de Albuquerque specifically because it was a little bit higher than the surrounding areas.
Right.
It would protect it from the flooding. But that flooding was also crucial because the seasonal floods deposited the silt on the ground, which made it very fertile land, and that led to a lot of the agricultural society that built up around the original villa, which today we know as Old Town Albuquerque.